Hi, I'm Chelsea, and I am the geekiest ballerina you will ever meet. And today we're going to talk about posture in ballet class. I have yet to find an effective way to get the posture that will allow, okay, hang on, let me back up. When I'm talking about posture / alignment, I am talking about getting the bones aligned so that we can have the most range of motion with the least amount of effort. So we need the pelvis aligned so that we can access our turnout. We need the spine stacked nicely so that we can stand without hurting things, that kind of thing. I have never heard a cue to engage muscles that effectively aligns people's posture. I've heard lots of cues that confuse people, but I really think that the best way to get the alignment we want in a ballet class is by relaxing into it. I am a huge fan of Lulu Swigard's book, Human Movement Potential. I very strongly recommend it. It's so good. And the posture that she relaxes people into is basically the posture we want to use in ballet class, minus the turnout inside the hip joint. I think back to my own training and the things I was told to do to get the alignment. Oh my gosh. Like you had to tuck the tail, but not too far, and squeeze the butt, but also access your turnout, which is not a thing that happens. And then you had to scoop the abs in, but you also had to breathe, but you weren't allowed to flare the ribs. So now I don't know where the breathing is coming from. And then you had to flatten the shoulders in the back without rounding in the front, and the shoulders also couldn't go up. And I kind of just ran out of space for like where to put things. And also I ran out of space to breathe. It was not helpful. It was not helpful. There's a better way to do this. So I have a list of images that I use when I teach to cue relaxation. And what I have found is that these images trigger a relaxation that brings the body back into a more beneficial alignment. There's not one image that works for every person. That's why I have a list for you. The one I use the very most is the image of a heavy cape. I usually have the students imagine that the cape is starting at the bottom of their shoulder blades and pulling down from there. That frees the upper chest to lift. Sometimes if we start the cape here, the whole self kind of just like plunk. You have a cape that starts at the bottom of your shoulder blades. It is long, it is heavy, and that tends to do really great things for your body. This next one is, I think, becoming less useful because we all use liquid soap. But if you imagine your neck as a really slippery bar of soap, if you've ever played in the bathtub with a bar of soap and been like, I hope you know what a wet bar of soap does. I'm finding that little kids now don't. It's all hand sanitizer and pumpy foaming soaps. But if you have someone who knows what it's like to try to grab a slippery bar of soap, thinking of the neck as a slippery bar of soap that is just slipping away from the back of the rib cage, that can be very helpful. This next one is great for my overthinkers. And it's less of an image, it's actual physiology. But you remind your dancers that your brain is floating inside their skull. It is not pounding against the edges. It is not taking up all of the space. It is floating in the cerebral spinal fluid. And the idea of the brain floating actually can visibly reduce a lot of tension in the shoulders, the neck, and the face. Just let it float. That works for kids. Sometimes I also like, the image of your head as a balloon and the neck is the string just kind of gracefully falling down. That doesn't work for the really literally minded students, but your brain is literally floating inside your skull. So we're going to move the body and the brain is going to come with us. That's helpful for some kids. For students that have a really hard time knowing where to put their shoulder blades, I think it's really helpful to have them imagine, or you bring in, a soft feather between their shoulder blades. You can go to a craft store and get like non-bird flu filled feathers. Like the little colored ones tend to be cheap and not as soft, but soft enough for what we're doing. If you have feather boas, just like rummage around in the bottom of that box, you'll find spare feathers. Those are very soft. If you are in the mood to invest, you can get like one of those beautiful quill pens for a wedding reception. That would be a really lovely tactile, gentle, soft thing to place between the shoulder blades. Maybe you have a peacock feather, but if you put a feather between the shoulder blades, it helps release the tension, but it also doesn't slump. We want to have like a mold for the feather. And this last one is really good for kids who tense their neck when they spot. If you think about your head and the way that it stacks on your vertebrae, it's not the vertebrae and then the head in front of it, because your neck curves and it's really well centered. You know those baby toys where you have like the red ring and then the orange ring and then the yellow ring and then the green and then the blue? And all of those rings, you stack them in order. Everything is nice and stable. And then you can spin the rings. That's the idea of what we want. Like the head can just spin really easily on top of that. Very, very smooth. There's not a lot of friction, so that spinning happens really easily. That's also an image that comes in really handy in arabesque. When it's the upper back tension that is limiting the arabesque, think of those vertebrae, the vertebrae that attach to your ribs. Think of those as the stacking baby rings. We have them stacked where they belong. Now we let them spin. I hope that those images were helpful for you. I hope that you try them in your class. If you have imagery that you find is really effective in helping people ease into a really helpful alignment, I would love to hear about it. Please comment below. If you are interested in more of my teaching resources, I have a technique curriculum, I have point curriculum, I have lesson plans, I have a blog, I have a monthly newsletter. You can find all of these things on my website, geekyballerina.com. I hope you have a really great class.